Lucas and Marta were driving home after a long night at a friend's party. The party had been lively, full of laughter and music, but now the energy had faded, and fatigue was setting in. It was nearly 3 in the morning, and the road was deserted, wrapped in the kind of quiet that only comes at that hour. The sky was clear, and a full moon bathed everything in a silvery light, making the winding road look like a river of silver. Lucas was driving with one hand on the wheel, the other entwined with Marta's, who had leaned back in the passenger seat, her head resting against the window. The radio softly played a slow song, almost inaudible, while the tires glided over the asphalt. The atmosphere in the car was relaxed, almost sleepy. Suddenly, without warning, an intense chill invaded the car, as if they had opened a door to a freezing winter. Lucas glanced at Marta, who frowned and rubbed her arms with her hands. "Do you feel that?" she asked, a hint of worry in her voice. Before Lucas could respond, the sky darkened unnaturally. Black clouds swirled above them, covering the moon and extinguishing its light. It was as if the night had decided to swallow all the light and leave them alone in oppressive darkness. A cold wind began to lash at the car, making the branches of the trees on either side of the road tremble. The shadows of the trees stretched and lengthened, moving as if they were alive. Lucas turned on the headlights, but the light barely pierced the darkness, illuminating only a few feet ahead. Every time he took a curve, he noticed something strange. At first, he thought it was fatigue playing tricks on his mind, but the sensation grew stronger. With every turn, out of the corner of his eye, he saw a flicker, a blurry figure reflected in the window. He turned his head to see better, but there was nothing. Just the dark road and the trees that seemed to lean toward the car. "I must be imagining things," Lucas thought, trying to calm himself. But as they drove on, the visions became clearer. A woman. Yes, there was a woman there, at every curve, staring at him. Her skin was pale like marble, and her eyes, two black voids, reflected an endless abyss. Her dark, tangled hair fell over her face, and she wore a white dress, torn and stained with blood. She seemed to float, as if she weren't touching the ground. A chill ran down Lucas's spine. His heart began to beat faster, sweat beaded on his forehead, and a knot of panic settled in his stomach. He tried to ignore her, to convince himself it was just a trick of his tired mind, but the woman didn't disappear. She was there, at every curve, looking at him with those empty eyes that seemed to devour his soul. "Lucas, are you okay?" Marta asked, noticing his tension. Lucas glanced at her, forcing a smile. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just tired," he replied, but his voice shook. Suddenly, on a sharp turn, the woman appeared closer, almost brushing against the car. Lucas jerked the wheel, almost losing control. Marta screamed, gripping the seat. "Watch out, Lucas," she exclaimed, her voice tinged with fear. Lucas took a deep breath, trying to calm down. But when he looked at Marta to make sure she was okay, his heart stopped. The woman from the curve was sitting next to him, in the passenger seat, instead of Marta. Her lips twisted into a grotesque smile, revealing sharp, yellow teeth. A nauseating smell of rotting flesh filled the car, and Lucas felt panic clench his throat. Without thinking, he opened the car door and threw himself out. He tumbled down the embankment, hitting rocks and branches, feeling the searing pain with each impact. When he finally stopped, gasping and bruised, he got up and looked up. The car was still moving, disappearing into the distance, but the wind carried with it a whisper, a laugh that chilled his blood. Lucas started to run, limping, ignoring the pain that racked his body. He could hear footsteps behind him, soft but insistent, as if the woman were floating above the ground. He didn't dare look back, but he could feel her presence, the cold emanating from her, the shadow looming over him. Suddenly, he tripped over something and fell to the ground. As he got up, he saw he had fallen on a piece of broken mirror. He picked it up, his fingers trembling. It was then that he saw her, standing before him, with a long, rusty sword in her hands. Her eyes gleamed with a malevolent light, and a sinister smile distorted her face. "Your soul belongs to me," she whispered, raising the sword. Lucas closed his eyes, bracing for the blow. But at that moment, a ray of sunlight broke through the dark clouds, lighting up the mirror in his hand. Without thinking, he raised it, reflecting the ray of sunlight toward the woman. The effect was immediate. An inhuman scream escaped the woman's lips as her skin began to burn. Flames engulfed her, consuming her in an instant. The air filled with the stench of burning flesh and smoke. Lucas covered his face, feeling the heat of the flames as the woman vanished into ashes. When he opened his eyes, everything was calm. The sun shone brightly, dispersing the clouds and filling the valley with light. Lucas fell to his knees, exhausted, the broken mirror still in his hand. It was all over. He woke up with a start in his bed, drenched in sweat. His heart was pounding, and his whole body ached as if he had really been beaten. He looked beside him and saw Marta, sleeping peacefully. He touched her face, making sure she was real, that it had all been just a nightmare. He sighed with relief, but as he turned his head toward the nightstand, his relief vanished. There, on the wood, rested a small piece of broken mirror, glinting with a faint glow in the morning light. Lucas felt the chill return, icy and deep, and he knew that somehow, the nightmare wasn't over.